Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Casual Gamer Society, the video game portion of the Comm Talk podcast, the podcast division of the Geek Devotions Network, the network devoted to letting you know that you are loved. So if you get nothing out of this podcast from this point forward, just know that you are loved, you are cared for, and doggone it, there's a purpose for your life. With me today is my special good buddy, my hetero house husband number 2, Dave Clements.
Hey,
how you doing?
It's my Friday, so I'm looking forward to the weekend.
Super jelly. super jelly. All right. Well, lots of stuff to talk about in this episode. I thought we had a lot of stuff to talk about in the last episode, but you know what? When it comes to the gaming industry, the hits keep rolling, and I guess so do we. But before we get to the seriousness, let's go into everybody's favorite segment. What are you playing? Being as yours is the segue, Dave, I'll start first.
Sure.
What I'm playing currently is the Dead Space remake. And can I just say it has all the feels of the original?
Nice.
Like I think both of us have lived long enough at this point where we've seen some pretty craptastic remakes happen. Just like, this is a cash grab. We're looking at you PS3 Silent Hill 2 and 3 HD remakes. Did you ever play those?
I didn't, but
they were so bad, dude. They were. Well, do you know the story behind those?
I don't.
So I guess Konami wanted to get these HD remakes done, but they wanted to have it come out at a very specific time period. So they had an uber tight schedule, and they outsourced the production to a third party company.
Okay.
And they didn't even have the gold. They didn't even have the gold versions. Like the gold versions were lost. So they gave working working versions of the games that they still had on some hard drive somewhere that still, wasn't complete code, and said, "Here you go."
Wow. And so
they didn't have all the art assets or
oh, that's terrible. Yeah, for those that don't know what John meant by the gold versions. So when a game is ready to go, they say that it has gone gold. So it's a playable version that shouldn't have a ton of bugs, although Cyberpunk, whatever. So that's what John's talking about.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
they
didn't have the gold. They sent them a dumpster fire of a code set, and it was like, do something with this, I guess.
Wow. I don't think I've played a Konami game since NES, NES era.
It's because they don't really make games anymore. They make pachinko machines, and that's about it. I mean, they're trying. I should shut my mouth because they're trying to get back into it, because they did a event a couple of months ago where they're firing up the old Silent Hill franchise, but they're basically shuttling it off to third party companies to make it. So
they're just a publisher at this point.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they're just licensing IPs is all they're doing, and that's about it.
Yuck.
But I mean, if the HD remakes of the Silent Hill games are what Konami is ready to put out, I almost think it's better that they third party it, because maybe the third parties will actually, care about what they're making.
Yeah. But back, Dead Space.
Yeah, Dead Space is fantastic. It gives me all the feels of when I played the original, but they changed just enough to keep it fresh, but not enough to really notice.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the visuals are just, they're chef kiss. For people out there who like survival horror games or liked the Dead Space games, I mean, this is the primo stuff. This is the high grade non-cut Colombian video game that you want,
right? Well, that's good. I played
totally just referencing video games, and that's it.
Yeah, Colombian video games. Yeah. I did play a couple hours of the Xbox 360 version because I have that, and I enjoyed it. It's just it's the problem I always run into. It's very violent and not something I can play when my kids are walking around. So it's kind of
Yeah,
gotten
just sit
back
your kids in
shelved
front
for
of
now.
it and just be like, just callous them to it early on.
I mean, I could do that with one of them, but it's the other one where my wife is like, "Mm, you said a naughty word, but we can't." No, she's not that bad, but
We're,
yeah.
oh no, I don't think Wendy's gonna like me when I come visit in a couple of
Oh,
months.
I think you'll be surprised. I think you'll be surprised.
Okay, all right. Anyway, what have you been what have you been playing, David?
So as always, I have a couple games that I'm playing for various reasons. Um, I've mentioned last time that I jumped back into Stardew Valley. I have realized that that is kind of my I'm getting ready to go to bed. I want to wind down, fall asleep game. So it's like when I start feeling tired or my character's tired in game, my character goes to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
the game saves, I shut my switch off, I go to sleep. Um, so I've been playing that, really enjoying like taking my time with that. The other game, which I keep wanting to talk about, I always forget about it. It's called Vampire Survivors. It's literally on every platform except for PlayStation. So, or no, it's not on Switch, I guess. But that is a roguelike shoot 'em up game, which wouldn't normally be my thing, but it's also like timed survival. So you have to last at least a half hour in every level in order
Mm.
to technically complete it. But there's treasures and you upgrade things eventually. And if you ever look at the trailer or look at screenshots, eventually your character has so many weapons and so many power ups that it's just like a blur of activity. And you're essentially just walking through like all these monsters that just swarm in throughout the level, and you just stand there and earn money and points. It's relaxing, but it's like there's lots of noises. It's a
That does not
cacophony of
sound
stuff.
relaxing to me, dude.
It wouldn't be, but I like zone out. I am super relaxed playing that game, but it's fun.
That sounds
I'm
like a good way to throw my controller across the room.
No, it's a lot of fun. But I'm still waiting to see a vampire. I've uncovered a few coffins and they're like vampires in another castle, which is like great throwback to Mario, but where's the vampire? It's fun though. And to transition not so eloquently like I do, GoldenEye 007 is available for Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack subscribers. I happen to be one of those, and the controls absolutely suck by default. I had to go to Reddit to find of course it was built for the 64, and Nintendo was like, "Nah, we're just going to emulate the game and hope that the people that are already spending way too much money on a subscription service will spend way too much money on a Nintendo 64 controller that works with the Switch." I didn't want to do that. So I started playing GoldenEye. Now, have you played GoldenEye? I'm assuming you have based on a comment you made.
It it's been well over a decade since I've last played it, but I have played it. I had a buddy who had a N64 that
Mm-hmm.
we would go split screen multiplayer on,
Yeah.
and just but it like I said, it's been a long minute, bro.
Um, but I start out in the first level and I'm playing with just normal Switch controls, and I go to do something and I move in a way that I wasn't expecting to move. So I was immediately like, okay, what the heck? So I go and I spent way too long trying to figure out controls. I had to go to Reddit because I found out that somebody had figured out a hack, and it's not worth it. So lucky for me, I can play it on Xbox instead because it is on Game Pass. So that's kind of been my default way to
Huzzah.
play it. And oh my gosh, so many feels and like so many like have you ever done that where you're like playing a game you haven't played in ages and it's like, "Oh yeah, I remember this one weird secret thing that's like nobody else would normally
Yeah,
remember that." Yeah.
yeah.
There's so
I
many
did that a
times
few
I've done it.
times when I did that a few times when I was playing through the uh, NSO. copy of Super Mario World because I lived in
Mhm.
that game for a while.
Right.
Same with my mini Super Nintendo copy of Donkey Kong Country.
Okay. Yeah. It's just, it's weird how your brain will go, hey, remember, this is the thing that you do in order to get past this. And it's weird muscle memory. So, um, yeah, if you have Xbox, definitely check out GoldenEye 007, especially if you missed out on it. The graphics are horrible, but it's, I don't know, there's a lot of nostalgia there. I would love to see a remake. I know they remade it at one point. And yeah, don't play the Switch version unless you want to do a bunch of control hopping and messing around.
Now, when it comes to, because you were just talking about you'd like to see a remake, that's actually been something that Nintendo has talked about, as has Rare, uh, and I have seen um, in other podcasts where they have this discussion with them. The reason why this game has never been remade from the ground up, like you would see for, like, for instance, the Dead Space remake that I've been jamming on, is because of the James Bond licensing that they have to go through for it, because they would have to relicense the IP in order to remake the game.
Right.
And that is just, it's not something that they consider to be financially viable because, I mean, it's, especially with them cranking out movies with Daniel Craig now that everybody and their mom goes to see. So obviously, uh, the IP holder for that is going to be holding on to that license for Buku Dolores.
Yeah.
Um, and so but in the same sense, I almost wonder if they're putting it out like this to see it is to kind of gauge as far as what the interest is in the game still to possibly make a remake.
I bet.
So who knows? Maybe weirder things have happened. I never would have expected a Dead Space remake because EA mishandled that property so badly by the end of that franchise's life cycle.
There's just something about these really weird polygon, terrible graphics though in GoldenEye that I love. But I still want a remake.
They're so bad. Like it's in that. It, I've heard it said before, but that generation of gaming was like the puberty of video gaming, where it's going through its awkward phase, or it's got acne and hairs coming out of places in splotchy ways that never was there before, and it's just gross to look at.
Yeah.
And it really is. Although I remember at the time, like when I saw the PS2 graphics for the first time, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing.
It's so real.
So it's one of those things where you kind of had to be there to understand why it's so great.
Yeah.
I mean, because you look at the stuff we got now and it's just like, there is not a polygon to be seen.
Right. Yeah.
But speaking of video games, that's a good opportunity for us to segue into the next topic. Let's talk about E3. Now, for the uninitiated out there who may just be super casual as far as their perspective on E3, Dave, could you explain to our audience what E3 is?
So, E3 is the Electronic Entertainment Expo. I had to look it up because I always forget. It takes place, uh, yeah, it varies, but it's basically where all of the video game companies come together and go, "This is the new stuff we have." And it's supposed to be a huge event that everybody looks forward to. And since probably, definitely 2020, but probably 2019, it started to take a downhill trajectory in popularity.
Mm-hmm. And this year, uh, IGN, which is another video game uh, coverage group, I guess, they announced that the big three will not be at E3 this year. And by
Yeah.
the big three, I mean Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. All three giant console companies will not be there. They will not be showing their wares there. They have no interest in being a part of E3. So all that's left at E3 now are the third party companies.
Right.
What does this say about the future of E3? What do you think?
Uh, well, I think I don't know. E3 could pivot toward at least on the gaming side because I think that they do some other. I mean, it's electronic stuff, but I think from the gaming side, if they were smart, they could start to pivot more toward, hey, this is like an indie showcase. We're gonna showcase stuff from indie companies. It's still not gonna be that big, but I don't know if the big three don't show up over the next couple years, it's done. But this had to hurt
Yeah.
when they announced that.
I'll be perfectly honest. It doesn't shock me.
Right.
The big three have been slowly pulling out of E3 over the past few years now. Nintendo, and it was the first one to withdraw themselves, wanting to lean more on their Nintendo Direct for announcements rather than waiting for big expos and game shows. Then in 2020, I know that was the year that Sony pulled out of it.
Mm-hmm.
The story at the time was that it was so that they could focus on the development and release of the upcoming PS5. Um, and now this is the first year it's been announced that Microsoft's not going to be a part of it. But the thing about it is that they don't really need to be a part of it anymore because all three systems now have their own pipeline to their customer base. With Nintendo having Nintendo Direct, Sony has State of Play. I don't know if Microsoft does or not, but it wouldn't shock me if they have developed some kind of announcement show for their fan base to catch their.
They just did, I think it was called Developer Direct, but it was like a super
Mhm.
short show. Nothing really spectacular. There was a like a first party exclusive that, or maybe it's a timed exclusive. I'm not sure. I can't even remember the name. Hi-Fi something. But it came out. It looks good. I haven't played it yet, but there wasn't a lot to show for that. So I'm looking
Mhm.
forward to Microsoft figuring out something for Xbox that's very similar to State of Play or uh, a Nintendo Direct. But right now, I don't think they really have any.
I'd be on the lookout for that, man, because I mean, ultimately, like E3, and all the other gaming shows, the reason why they were big was because when they started, it was really pre-internet and pre always online and all that sort of stuff. And that was the way that we would get our gaming information. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you would have these magazines that would report on these big expos and have all these hands-on responses. You had stuff like Game Pro and IGN and
Game
a
Informer.
PlayStation official magazine, Game Informer, all that. And a lot of those magazines just aren't around anymore because you can get that information so much faster via the internet.
Yeah.
And if Sony, like, you know, I'm going to speak from Sony's point of view because, you know, I'm the Sony player between the two of us. If Sony has a big announcement that they're sitting on that they feel timing wise it would be more advantageous for them to put it out in the month of March rather than waiting until June for E3, you know, they have the ability to do that now. So what, you know, it's sort of like, what's the point of waiting for a big con in the age of instant information?
Right.
And I think, and I really think this is going to be the writing on the wall for a lot of these big expos, between this and the Tokyo Game Show and Penny Arcade, you know, PAX is what people would call it, and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think that all of them are going to die off, but they're not going to be as big as they used to be. And I think PAX saw it happening, saw it coming down the pipeline because they've kind of turned more towards the tabletop community with PAX Unplugged and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I think stuff like Tokyo Game Show and um, E3 are gonna. I, I I personally don't think E3 is going to survive very much longer.
I would be
I
surprised.
think I think TGS and PAX Prime are going to become more third party and indie focused with less focus on the big three. Um, and really the really meaty projects, the console exclusives that are designed to sell consoles, I think those are going to be announced directly through the big three, on whatever announcement system that they have. But yeah, I don't foresee the current gaming culture as far as large shows being a viable thing going
No.
forward for much longer, which kind of sucks because I enjoyed looking forward to E3 every year. It was a lot like it was a lot like video game Christmas, where it's just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what are we gonna get this year?
Mm-hmm. Oh well, it is what it is.
I know.
I was kind of, I mean,
Old man John's out on his lawn screaming at the sky again.
I I would tune into E3 when I could, but being a casual gamer, it wasn't something that I was like, oh my gosh, it's gonna happen. But yeah, it's definitely kind of the end of an era, and I don't know that they're gonna last. They're gonna have to pivot to do something different.
I don't know, man. I don't like it. If I'm being honest, but personally, what I'd like to see going forward, I'd like to see someone join the big three. Bring another console to market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I know that's kind of a random thought going into this, but I don't know. It's like I don't really feel like Nintendo's really has the need to compete with anybody because they're so far out in left field.
yeah,
And Sony and Microsoft, like, I don't even really feel like they're competing with each other anymore either. They're just like, hey, you got your thing over there, I got my thing over here.
yeah,
Because outside of the third party stuff that releases on both systems, if you look at what the console exclusives are between the two consoles, you're going to see a lot more of the you end up seeing a lot more of like the RPG style and big sprawling story based entertainment on Sony, and then a lot of the quick action stuff on Microsoft. And it's just like,
there's also we're seeing, and this is a little off topic, but we're also seeing where uh Sony is getting into the PC gaming market, and those games are showing up on Steam, and Microsoft has stuff that's on Steam. So Steam is almost like, in a way, it's kind of this unifier of both of those platforms, where it's like if you wait long enough and you're a PC gamer, you can play Halo. I mean, that's a dated reference, but you can play Halo, but you can also play Spider-Man and not worry about being PlayStation or Xbox.
I don't like it. I don't like it. And it's not just because I'm a Sony fanboy, but I don't like it because it's that need to compete and dominate that drives innovation.
Yeah.
And when people get when brands get too comfortable coexisting with each other, you don't get that innovation, and that's when you get just ugh.
I
It
think that
just
we're
it
still
just
dealing with that. It's a different way. Like right now, they're competing with Game Pass versus PlayStation Plus.
mm, mhm.
It's not a huge competition because I feel like Xbox is definitely kind of winning that because of how many games they're releasing regularly. Not that it's like great content versus what PlayStation. I've kind of watched both platforms and it's comparable, but
Mhm.
Xbox still has that couple steps ahead of PlayStation.
I can see that. I again, for me, it's apples and oranges. It's really whatever you're coming to gaming for.
Right.
So I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot to be excited about in gaming right now, but if the consoles are genuinely not trying to compete with each other anymore, I see a dark horizon for us gamers out there.
But speaking of competition, there's a
And dark
shakeup.
horizons.
Yeah, there's a shakeup in the tabletop role playing game world, and I'm here for it.
Okay, so last episode we talked about the OGL dumb point dumb, and as the world turns, so does the tabletop drama. Tell us about it, Dave, because I think you're probably the most well versed in this whole old GL business between the two of us.
Yeah, I was actually kind of. I don't do drama, but I was so wrapped up in this. Like, I was
Oh, it was
anxious.
tasty.
Yeah. I was like, oh my, I got to get off Twitter. I got to quit looking at YouTube. There's just so much. And then, like, everybody's so angry. So, just to recap, Wizards of the Coast, who owns D&D, they're basically like, hey, this one document that allows third-party creators to make content for Dungeons and Dragons, we're gonna change it all up and really hurt third party creators. It blew up. They were over like 2 to 3 weeks, basically the whole month of January 2023.
Yeah.
Everybody was up in arms. And finally, as of recording this, it was last week, Wizards of the Coast goes, you know what? You just go ahead and keep your OGL 1.0A, which was the big thing in contention. Go ahead and keep it the way it is. And as an extra gift, because, we're worried that you guys might actually ruin our business, we're going to put the system reference document, which is the game rules. We're going to put that in Creative Commons so nobody can ever touch it. And everybody in the tabletop world is like, yeah, awesome. We won finally. Like, we won D&D.
January 2023 will forever be known as the month when the geeks went to war. Because that's literally what that felt like. It's just, I have never seen that amount of angry neck breathers. I mean, neck beards and mouth breathers in my life. And I say that lovingly. Please don't write in to Geek Devotions because I count myself among that crew. I'm going to tell you now, it's great that everybody thinks that this is over.
It's not.
But it's not over. It as long as Hasbro owns WotC, it will never be over. They may have given up on 5e, but let me tell you when D&D 1 or 1 D&D or what Run DMC or whatever they're calling it, when that unloads, when that gets unveiled, you're going to see them claws come out again and they're going to say, oh, well, we opened up 5e, but now that we've got all this going, anything going forward is going to be under this new OGL. It's just like,
most likely.
So my recommendation to everybody out there is still abandon ship.
Yeah,
because none of this is going to be good. Don't go see the D&D movie. Don't support WotC. Don't, cancel your D&D Beyond subscriptions because it's going to be a hot mess. I mean, honestly, what this reminds me of is an abusive spouse coming back to their wife saying, no, I've changed. See, look, I've given you the OGL 1.0A and I've given you the SRD for 5e.
I bought you jewelry, but what you don't know is I'm going to wear it the next time I hit you. Like, maybe that's triggering and maybe that's too far, but that's essentially what we're dealing with here.
I personally feel so betrayed by this whole OGL nonsense that I don't want to play D&D anymore. Like, I'm going to keep my core books. Books because I had Matthew Lillard sign my DMG. But as far as my supplemental stuff, I'm going to take it to my gaming store and do a buyback on it, get in-store credit, and probably use that to get a different system. I know what system I am leaning the hardest towards now, and I think you know which one it is too. Cobalt Press has a project that they're talking about called Black Flag, which is completely built off of 5e using OGL 1.0A and the SRD. So that's going to be about the closest to 5e rules as you're probably going to find out there. And I am 100% here for it. Like,
agreed.
I am ready for that. I have signed up for playtesting and I am about that. So that's where I would recommend if you're out there and you're like, hey, I like 5e, that's where I would point you to. I think be amongst all the systems out there that have been just rattling their sabers against WotC. And there's been some good stuff that's been happening. I'm looking at Paizo, I'm looking at Chaosium. Paizo, Chaosium, and Cobalt Press are basically like the big three outside of WotC,
Right.
as far as I'm aware. But out of everything that I've seen coming out of this, really, it's Cobalt Press who I think is gonna they're gonna make a name for themselves based off of how they've conducted themselves.
Yeah. I
But that's not to
will.
say I haven't seen some entertaining stuff out there like, hey, we're not WotC.
Mhm.
It's just like, oh
Yeah.
my god.
Yeah. Speaking of Paizo, so Paizo is they were kind of the first people to go, I don't like what's going on with Wizards of the Coast. We're going to take 3.5 or 3.5 edition D&D. We're going to take those rules and we're going to make Pathfinder. In the last 2 weeks, they have sold out of 8 months worth of stock because people have essentially just given D&D the middle finger, grabbed Pathfinder, which is the next closest thing, and like I'm still waiting on my Pathfinder second edition rule book to show up, and I ordered that like almost 2 weeks ago. So
Nice.
yeah, it's taking a while. Speaking of, I did want to talk about some other systems that I'm going to try with my home group, my home game D&D
Mm-hmm.
group. I don't know what to call it anymore. I used to just call it my home D&D game, and now it still is because we haven't officially finished D&D. But I picked
You
up.
never finished D&D, Dave.
I know. But I picked up the Cypher system from Monty Cook Games. That's supposed to be something that is, I wouldn't say rules light, but it that system works in any setting. So if you want to do superheroes or you want to do fantasy like D&D, the rule set will accommodate that. I also picked up the Numenera starter set, which uses those same Cypher system rules. So at least you have a
Mm-hmm.
setting to use those. I mentioned Pathfinder second edition. Um, Actually, last year, I think it was last year, there was a humble bundle that had Starfinder, which is the space version of Pathfinder, and that was a really good deal. I think I spent maybe $50 and got, I don't know, $150 worth of stuff, and that included the Starfinder beginners kit, or what do they call it, beginner box. So it's kind of a,
Mm-hmm.
here's the basic rules and an adventure, go play for a couple of hours and get a feel for it. And then I backed a Kickstarter last year and just got the book conveniently in the midst of all the OGL stuff for a game called Flabbergasted. It's kind of like, have you ever heard of Wooster and Jeeves?
No.
It's like a,
But I've seen your copy of Flabbergasted, and it has me intrigued. Like, I really want to play that when I'm out at your place in
yeah,
April.
it's a like takes place in the 1920s, kind of all over the world. There's no set spot, but
Mm-hmm.
uh it's very comedic. You have a, what do they call it, like a little society club that you and your group are in, and you get into trouble, and it's just supposed to be, it's based off of like, old like BBC TV shows, like
Mm-hmm.
comedy shows.
Right.
So definitely a lot of different things that I'm gonna dabble in, probably not know what to decide on, but that's where I'm at. But I am definitely excited about what Kobold Press is doing. Every time I see something from Project Black Flag, I know I send it to John and I'm like, hey, look, they're doing a thing.
I know, and that's when both John and Dave jump up and down, clapping our hands, squeeing like a bunch of Justin Bieber fangirls.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, that's going to be like, if for Dave and I, that's going to be like when if the Beatles got back together, found a way to resurrect George Harrison and John Lennon, and they're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
we made a new album." It's just like
Right.
it's going to be a big deal, and I'm super here for it, and I was super
For
here
sure.
just to watch the nerds go to war with WotC. Like I this is going to be one of those situations where I'm going to be like, I was there for that. Like
Yeah.
I was a part of it.
I was there at the end of
So
Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. I'm
yeah,
I'm really interested in how Watsy is gonna recover from this. I'm thinking of the meme from Tiger King where he's just like, I will never financially recover from this. I don't know how they're gonna in good conscience put out 6E, which is what I'm calling it, and attempt to do a lot of the things that they were trying to do because
they
they were
won't.
just shooting themselves in the foot. They're going to have to walk back a lot of stuff for anybody to accept it. And it's been said a lot online, but people will get over this. People will forget that this whole thing happened, kind of like a lot of people don't know that the whole situation with 4th edition happened, and the
Hmm.
world burned then.
No, to be
Um,
fair, fourth edition was far less attended than 5e was. So this
true,
was a
true.
guffaw on a much larger scale.
Yeah. But I don't know how they're going to comfortably put that out. And just real quick, before I know we're super amped up about it, but if you happen to be on social media, and I expect this out of Geek Devotions listeners, um, you know, but if you come across employees of Wizards of the Coast, or specifically Dungeons and Dragons, don't give them a hard time. I, there are a lot of those people that are being hit really hard because this is their job. They can't really just walk away from it, even if they don't agree with it. So be kind, love people, that kind of thing. Just don't give Hasbro and Watsy your money anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to attack people. The thing about it is, we did not go to war with people. Okay,
Right.
we went to war with a company, and we have so far come out as being successful to that
Mm-hmm.
end. But you know what? We don't need to attack people in the process, because and I say this because I used to work in a call center for Bank of America during the housing market crash.
Oof.
And Bank of America at the time was forced to assume countrywide mortgages. There we go.
Mhm.
Which was one of the home lending companies that had crashed during the housing market crash. And I would catch it all day long on the phone. And it's just like, I didn't make this decision. I'm just a
Right.
guy on the phone. And 99 times out of 100, when you're attacking somebody who works for a company in an indirect manner, be it through phone calls or over the internet, they're just a guy who's trying to put food in their family's mouths.
Yep. Yep. I
So
live that.
have some grace, all right? Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, this has been a real interesting situation, and as weird as it sounds, like, I've enjoyed every minute of it. It's
Yeah.
just,
It's true.
so, do you have anything to add to the OGL nonsense?
Not really. I mean, I will say this. Okay, I do have something. We're
Okay.
not saying don't play D&D 5e. Go do it. If that's what you're comfortable with, do it. Just understand what's going on behind the scenes, and that third-party creators, which have really given a lift to what 5th edition is, they're being harmed in the process. Their livelihood is. But by all means, keep playing 5th edition if you want to. Uh, it doesn't really affect your home game what's going on. But also be open to trying other systems. Talk to your game group and go, hey, is there a different setting you've wanted to try? Let's find a game that works that way. And I know last time we talked a lot about what playing games is doing. We're still working on that. But I think our whole crew is in agreement that, you know, we don't want to be connected to that, and we don't want to be there if something really bad were to happen. They're like, hey, all of your podcast stuff, we're taking back the fan content policy and we're changing it, and now you owe us money for it. So we're playing
Right.
it safe, but your home game, play what you want to play.
Play what you want. We're the only thing we're doing is suggesting, now is the best time to try new systems, because they are going to be more prevalent out there, and they're going to be putting out varied content for people to try. So if you have enjoyed 5e, that's fantastic. Enjoy 5e. It's free to everybody now, apparently, according to WotC. However, I would say, maybe try something else too. If you spend all your time eating meatloaf, you'll never know what fried chicken tastes like.
There you go. I love fried chicken.
I love meatloaf. That being said, before we swing on over to Ask a DM, let's go ahead and do something that we're supposed to be doing, but we have yet to do. Here's a commercial from our partners at Culture Box.
This podcast is a proud member of Culture Box. Whether you enjoy geeky reviews, comedy, or original fiction, you can open up the Culture Box and find something excellent for your soul. Point your web browser to culturebox.media.
Crikey, looky there! It's a rare taco-phibian. You rarely see such a... Whoa! Did you see that? A cracking glitz kaiju just chowed down that taco.
But what does that even mean?
It means that when you're done listening to Comm Talk, check out the Retro Rewind podcast.
Oh, okay.
And welcome back. Hope you... we want to encourage you to support whoever that was. Dallas is putting in the commercial later, so I don't know who it is. But I can assure you, everybody at Culture Box is somebody worth supporting. I know most of the people there, and they're all good people. So go check them out. All right, Mr. Clements, how many questions would you like to cover today?
I mean, actually, this didn't go near as long as I thought it would. So, I mean, we could do a couple.
All right. Let's do 3, and I can do one from three different individuals to kind of swirl it around here. First question comes from Branson Boykin,
That guy.
and Branson asks, if you're homebrewing a creature, how do you gauge what level it is?
I don't know. I've never homebrewed a creature.
That's right. Dave doesn't get so much into the homebrewy stuff.
Not yet.
Well, Branson, I would refer you to the Dungeon Master's Guide. I don't have it open in front of me, but they do have a section for how to homebrew and gauge what the CR is, or challenge rating for the uninitiated. Yeah, there's some maths involved. I haven't actually... Well, that's a lie. I take that back. I don't often homebrew creatures, and when I do, I don't figure out what the CR is on them, because usually I'm doing it for plot purposes rather than fight purposes. So, yeah, I mean, the short answer of it is get a DMG. They have the math in it to figure out what the CR is in it if you need to break that down, and if you want to compartmentalize that far out. Did that make sense, Dave?
It did. Yeah.
Okay.
I got what you're putting down.
All right. The next one comes from Celeste. And Celeste asks, how do you handle conflict within the game? And that is the entire question. Okay. I'm going to say that there's two ways to take that question. I don't know if she means conflicts between players of the game or conflicts between characters in the game. And those are going to be two completely different answers. So let's answer both ways to take that question.
Okay. Yeah. If it's between two player characters, I like to let them role play it and hope that they don't take it too far and that it becomes personal. Because when it becomes personal, it becomes messy, and then you have to deal with the other half of this question. Which, considering my home game is all family, there are personal conflicts that do come up between my players, and a lot of it is being able to pull everybody back and go, okay, so we're just playing a game, and whatever happens in the game and it's not that big of a deal, and we'll get over it and we can redo it if necessary. But as far as the person to person interactions, usually it's, hey, why don't you take 5 minutes, walk away from the table if it's heated at that point? If it's something that has happened, it gets brought up later, then usually I'm trying to message that person or figure out how to talk to the two people involved, understanding the full story. And I play peacemaker and just go like, what happened wasn't acceptable, or this is how it made the other person feel. I don't have any specific references because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus as far as my players go. But it's very much about understanding the full scope of the situation and making sure that everybody knows this is a game. We're supposed to have fun. If you're not having fun, I, as your DM, your GM, need to know, and we will move you guys. We will make adjustments to player characters if we realize it's a little bit too personal, and you just kind of adapt. And if it ever gets too bad, you can learn from Crit Crab, and those people do not belong at your table anymore.
I also recommend Den of the Drake. That's an amazing YouTuber that does what Crit Crab does, except I don't think Den of the Drake really touches the really gnarly cases where it stops being funny cringe and starts getting into creepy cringe.
Yeah.
Crit Crab tends to deal with that a little bit more. From my perspective, I have been fortunate enough where I don't have the interpersonal conflict so much in the games that I have DM'd. Everybody in playing games is really cool about that sort of stuff. I had one player who got mad with me because I wouldn't let him use intimidation as a free pass to make NPCs do everything he wanted them to do, because I don't think intimidation or persuasion is that. There's a reason why it's not called manipulation. So but I mean, if you're a DM and you're running into that situation, you just got to lay down the rules and say, hey, my job as the DM is to make the calls, and this is the call that I've made. If you don't like it, I apologize, but I'm going to stick by it because this is the way that I read the rules. And Chris Perkins, who was one of the people who wrote 5e, has flat out said they left the rules purposefully vague in certain areas to give more control to the DM as far as being able to make the calls. So what the DM says goes. Interpersonal stuff between players, typically I would be in agreement with Dave if it ever came up at one of my tables. I'd be, why don't you two take 5 in other rooms, put you on timeout for a little bit, and then come back to it when everybody's cooled off. Understand that this is a game and it's for the purpose of having fun. Stop trying to win D&D, because most conflict comes when someone's trying to win D&D. Or whatever your role-playing game is of choice. I gotta stop using D&D as the default here now all of a sudden. I have been involved in a combination of the player versus PC situation that had overflowed into personal problems on the first tabletop role-playing game that I played with Eric as the GM. It was when we were playing Titan's Grave. Mm-hmm. And I was playing a morally ambiguous rogue character. Big shocker, right? And another guy was playing kind of a barbarian build. I don't know what they actually called it in game. But the other guy bought a dog, or specifically he bought a puppy. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Titan's Grave, but it's sort of a combination of D&D, except there's some technology involved in it as well. So there's like vehicles.
Yeah.
I don't know. It strikes me a bit more like the way the McElroy brothers did D&D on the first campaign of the Adventure Zone.
Right.
But anyway, he never took care of his dog. He'd always leave it in whatever vehicle we had, and the dog would end up ripping, because it's a puppy, and it would end up ripping stuff up, and we'd have to pay for it, and he'd never feed the thing, so some other people would end up having to be responsible for it, and blah, blah, blah. Well, given that I'm playing the morally questionable rogue, who's getting increasingly frustrated with the situation, like Dave, you play a rogue in our campaign.
Yes.
and a morally questionable one as well. If
Mhm.
you were if Wilder or Felix was at his breaking point with somebody with a dog that gets carried everywhere but never gets taken care of, how would you fix the situation as a morally ambiguous rogue?
Well, see, Wilder has this cool little perk is he runs the Thieves Guild now. So the dog's just going to come up missing. But if we were in Waterdeep, it would still come up missing just a little bit quicker.
That's exactly what happened. He found his dog by a water dish and it was no longer breathing. May have had to deal with some poison. I'm not sure. Suffice it to say, the guy who played that character was very angry with me for having made arrangement, putting a hit on his dog, basically, is what happened. I'm like, and he was like legit angry in real life. I'm like, look, you need to understand what happens in this game is just, it's a game.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we're all playing a game. The dog never existed in the first place. So let's not, let's not let a fake dog ruin a real friendship. All right.
Or horses.
And I had to, looking at you, Amanda. But I mean, people get so attached to their characters and the things that their characters have and stuff like that, they forget that it's not real.
Yeah.
You know, you can have a good time with it, but at the end of the day, you need to put that character back in the toy box because that's all it is.
Yep.
So, all right. Next question comes from the ginormous list that Squid sent us.
Holy
Good
cow.
golly, did she send us a lot of questions to answer on here?
She's fired.
No. Here's a good one. And this one actually came up in conversation that we had in our Playing Games with Strangers chat. XP, milestones. How do I handle character leveling?
I like Milestone. I've never played XP, but I could see the benefits of it. I think it would be weird, though, to have player characters with different levels because it would make combat and just some encounters a little harder to finagle because, well, if you're a level 3 and, you know, Nancy's a level 7 because of experience points, you might die. And I can only do so much.
I tend to fall into that mindset as well. I've played both XP and Milestone. My preference is for Milestone because then, yes, all your characters are playing at the same level. You don't have the competition in fights to get the kill, to get whatever XP. You know, you don't have kill stealing or anything like that. So it Milestone, I think, pushes collaboration a little bit more. XP is a little bit fun because then, you know, not everybody's opening their presents at the same time, but you got to keep track of that XP gain. And as a DM, I don't like it because, you know, I'm not keeping track of my players' XP. So when I'm doling it out, I have to go completely based off of their word. As far as, oh, I leveled up. And it's just like, did you?
Right.
Did you really?
Yeah, I think
I'm not suggesting that.
Yeah, I think that it could also feed back into our last question. I have players at my table. I don't know that I'd say that they're competitive necessarily, but I will say that our ranger gets really, really upset at the number of kills that the barbarian will just snatch right at the end. And if we played XP, I think my ranger would quit.
So ultimately I would say it comes down to your group, you know, and how they want to play. If they want to have that competition in the game, then go with that. You know, some people find their fun from that. Me as both a player and a DM, I find that incredibly stressful. I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it. I know that the guy who taught me how to DM, some of you may know, his name is Eric. He owns Sage's Portal. He's a fan of XP, and he made no bones about that in the chat, the aforementioned chat. when we were talking about that earlier. In this chat, I was talking about a D&D actual play podcast I had started listening to called Sneak Attack, which I was enjoying until the end of the episode when on mic the DM's like, oh yeah, I forgot to mention you guys get such and such XP for and it pulled me out of the podcast so bad, and I just couldn't bring myself to come back to it. And I'd made mention of that on our playing games with strangers chat. Eric came in, he's like, yeah, why would anybody want a fair system based off of blah 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 blah, in the typical Eric backhanded sarcasm way. I'm just like, yeah, that would be me who doesn't want that your fair system based off of action. So little harassment for you, Eric, even though I know you'll never actually listen to this episode. So so actually that having that extra question there brought us right up to about an hour of recording time. So once we're post editing, we'll still be close. So I think this is as good a time as any to break it down. Dave, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Oh, I've got a link tree. It's like Linktree/Mr. Dave Clements, I think is what it is. That's where I'm at, but primarily playinggameswithstrangers.com.
Check the show notes for Dave's link tree. Check the show notes for my link tree. I would also recommend you to Playing Games with Strangers. Also, go check out The Bottom Shelf, which is a bad movie podcast that I do, and Dave sometimes pops on there as well. This next set of episodes that are coming up on that, we're talking about a movie that does, in fact, have to do with video games, which is Resident Evil, the first one. What was that?
I said, ew. That was a good
also going to be talking. Oh, gotcha. Also going to be talking about Cooties, which is kid zombies. So something for you to look forward to on those episodes as well. With that being said, I'm John. That's Dave. And you've been listening to Casual Gamer Society. Good night, everybody.